Alright, so we're going to start with chapter 1, okay? Your thing's not turning on. Oh, I got it. I just had to turn it on first. Okay, so chapter 1. Tell me what's anatomy.
Study of structure.
Right, good. What are some different ways that we study anatomy? Some of the different things we can do to inspect. So that's one. Inspection is one. No, not pathology. Palpation. What else? Auscultation. Yep, and one more. Percussion. Good. So what's physiology then? The study of the function. Good. All of this, like birth of modern medicine and all those different people and stuff, you won't need to know those. Those won't be on your test. But what's a hypothesis?
Just an educated guess.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's to suggest a method for answering. So, I mean, you do that all the time, right? You do it on a daily basis. Like, even with driving, if I'm going to get there in time, you do it all the time without even realizing it. So, what about a scientific fact? What's that?
Something, a certain outcome, you predict it's going to happen.
Okay, yeah. Or information that can be independently verified by a trained person. So anybody that knows how to read a thermometer could say, you know, it's 75 degrees outside, and then someone else can be like, yeah, all right, or no, it's not, it's 90. What about a law of nature?
Predictable way of pattern energy behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And then what about a theory?
Statement or set of statements derived from facts, laws, and hypotheses.
Right, good. So what's an example? Gravity, right? Good. What about evolution? What's that?
Changes genetics.
Right. So genetics is your key word there. So if you, when you're taking your test, if there's, I don't know, some kind of answer that you're between two, and one of them has a change in genetics in the answer, then that's the one you want. Evolution. What about natural selection?
How evolution works.
Yeah, so it's something has like a hereditary advantage that should be passed on. So I always give the example of like if you have a yellow bird flying in the sky, it's a lot more likely to be picked off rather than a blue bird that's flying, right? So the blue bird is a lot more likely to pass on its hereditary advantage of being blue. Okay. So what about adaptations? Yeah, so you're adapting to the environment. And then that stuff about like life in the trees and walking upright, you don't need to know that stuff either. All right, so the hierarchy of complexity. You want to start with small or large? Small? Okay, so what's the smallest?
Atoms.
Yep. And then what? Yeah. So you go from atoms to molecules to macromolecules to organelles to cells to tissues to organ system, and then you end with the organism. Good. So then tell me, what are the 8 characteristics of life?
Organization.
Yep.
Homeostasis.
Responsive.
Yep.
Metabolism.
Metabolism. Yep.
Evolution.
Yep.
Organization.
Yep. So we have organization, cellular composition, metabolism, responsiveness to movement, homeostasis, development, reproduction, and evolution. So what does it mean if even just one of those things is missing? Right? You might as well just be the desk you're sitting on. All right, homeostasis. Super important, guaranteed guest question. The little stars by it. What is it? Yeah. So it's your, yeah. So it's the body's ability to detect change and then activate a mechanism to reverse it. Or basically, your ability to maintain an internal environment regardless of the external. Okay. And then what are your two feedback loops that deal with homeostasis? Positive and negative, right? So what happens with the negative?
Tries to reverse whatever is going on.
Yep. Yeah. So it senses a change and then you have mechanisms to reverse it. Whereas a positive, what happens?
They're working towards something.
Yeah.
Self.
Yeah, so it's self-amplifying. Okay. So the way I remember the difference is negative feedback loopings happen all the time and every day. So like your blood pressure, your breathing, your heart rate, just temperature, all of that stuff just happens every day without you even thinking about it. Whereas a positive is things that like shouldn't be happening every day. So they happen in more extreme circumstances. Like you shouldn't be popping out babies every day. Or like having a blood clot, bleeding, so you need to clot that every day. Things like that. So if you were to have a question on your test as to if it's a positive or negative, just think about it that way. If it happens every day, if it's a normal thing, or if it's only in an extreme circumstance. So what about a fever? Would that be positive or negative? Positive. Yeah, good. All right, what are your three components to the feedback loop? Receptor.
Integrating center.
Yep.
And effector.
Yep, good. So receptor, integrating center, and effector. So what does your receptor do?
Recognizes change.
Yep. Yep. So it senses the change. What about the integrating center?
It makes a decision and sends it.
Yep, so it sends it to the brain or the spinal cord, and then what's going to make a decision about what needs to happen. And then what about your effector?
It makes that.
Yeah, it carries out the response. So if you put your hand on a hot stove, what's your receptor?
Get your hand off.
Not quite yet. So what's the receptor?
Heat.
The heat, right, so your hand. And then it's going to send that information all the way up to your brain and spinal cord. And then what happens? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So your integrating center's like, oh my god, that's freaking hot, take it off. And then it gets sent back down to your hand, and then you take it off, and that's your effector. Okay? And I think that's pretty much it for chapter 1. You guys have any questions on it? No?